Well, after many delays and various interruptions, we're back on it. Next job is to scrape in the dovetails on the top slide. Before I do that, I want to check that the mating faces on the top slide, if you remember when we clamped it on before we'd addressed this and the underside, we were getting a blank spot in the middle. Anyway, now that that's been scraped flat and its mating face scraped accordingly, when that's clamped up, that's the print I'm getting straight off the plate. So sorry for spinning you around. I'm happy that now set up nicely, so I can now start working on the dovetail of the top piece. Over here, do one, and then make the other one parallel to it, and then use that then to print this one, and then it's down to working the gib to fit. So I've got my work cut out, but the plan is get this nailed down now. Once those are scraped in, and I want to take off the absolute minimum so that I don't have to bugger about with the alignment of the bronze nut that sits in there and the screw. So obviously, as I'm taking material off this side, it's shifting the mating face over, which is shifting the alignment of the screw. I don't really want to have to remake that, not at this stage. I'd like to get it so it works, and then I can worry about making a new nut and screw once the lathe running. Right, cup of tea, and then I'll work out what I'm going to do. Right, so we've loosely mounted it in the vise, and it's pinched between a point there and along the bottom here, so which are non-working surfaces, yeah. We're not cranking it up tight because we don't want to distort the thing. So it is literally, I mean, if I give it a good tug, I could pull it out. Drop the straight edge along and just give it a bit of a rub, and you can see it's printing in the middle and it's worn at either end. So what I'm going to do first of all, before I do anything else, is I'm going to create some relief down in the bottom of this corner. I could stick it in the shaper and run the tool backwards and forwards, but I tend to use an old hacksaw blade. It doesn't need a lot out, but it wants sort of 10 or 15 thou. I'll show you when I've created it what it looks like. And that's there purely to ensure that the straight edge doesn't bottom out on that intersection of the faces, because if it does, it's very hard to get a consistent print. So you create a bit of a relief, and then this face then goes back perpendicular to where it is without being interfered with that. So that's about 10 minutes work backwards and forwards with the saw. It just gives it a little bit of clearance if you compare it with the bottom edge. What I have found is my old saw blade now knackered, so we'll just use another one. So we'll give it another print and then we'll give it a scrape. So that's after scraping the clearance in the corner, just giving it a rough stoning off. You can see the print's already extended because the straight edge is now seating properly. So what we're going to do now is take out that middle section, probably take a thou down. So I give it 2 or 3 passes and see if we can, basically we want it printing on the ends and maybe not in the middle, and then gradually take it in. But the trick is to try not to take too much out. What I'm going to be using is basically the standard 30mm wide tip, rotated 90 degrees, and then it's got a chamfer on both top faces. So it's only got two cutting faces, one there and one that's in the clamp. That's just to enable you to get into that tighter corner. So we'll stick the camera up and see if we can get your camera angle. course the camera would be in the way. I'll shift you to the other end. Got to make sure you get all the spirit off, or whatever you're using as your lapping lubricant, what do you call it, deburring lubricant. Otherwise it wrecks your print. You put it in flat to the face, this one, and then you tilt it, and then just a slight movement. Rinse and repeat. So we're not further on this way, we've moved it a bit further that way. I use a DMT diamond stone just to rub the face of my little lapping stone. I noticed the guys that are selling precision ground flat stones, I mean, a lot of that, I've only seen one person was doing an angled one for getting into dovetails, and you're obviously buying them in a pair, and it's a couple $100 plus shipping. Bit rich for my blood, versus £8 and a 30 quid diamond stone, which seems to be working all right for me. How's that showing up? Yeah, so we'll just keep taking that down until we get the ends in, and then we'll take another pass to relieve the middle, and then bring the ends down. Then we know it's all flat, as opposed to if there's any rock. It's not easy to introduce rock with such a small movement, but you know, something you need to be aware of. And I'll bring you back when we've done a bit. Before I hack too much off, I just wanted to check the degree of wear from one end to the other. I'll talk about the measurements in a moment, but taking the measurements, these are my go-to pins I normally use. Now the idea is it should touch around about halfway, and that's obviously not. So I've had a route through my box and found some smaller ones, and when they're in there, they're making contact in a better position. However, if I use a 2 to 3 micrometer, because it's literally 3 inches, the framework around the micrometer in this section is fouling on here to get an accurate reading, a repeatable reading. So I've dug out a gauge block just because it's a nice flat parallel surface of about the right size. I'll stick that down and then use a 3 to 4 like that. So actual measurements, the important bit, the ends are within 1 thou across that span. This one's the thinnest one. This is the tool end. Then we go up 5, up 7, up 6, up 4, up 3, up 1. So basically we've got 7 thou more material in that position than we have at that position. So I don't want to be removing any off this end. I don't want to be removing any off the far end. It's all got to come out of that section, which is what the print was showing us. So I'm going to carry on printing it and working it, and it's this face that I'm doing first. And I would expect by the time I get a print that's all the way along, I should have halved that measurement, and that's based on the wear is going to be split reasonably evenly between both faces. Not brilliantly, but it'll certainly take the bulk of it out. I'm expecting that face to be a little bit more hollow. Right, waffle, waffle, waffle. I'll get on with it. So that's had 4 roughing passes, and we've now got, if this is 0, up 2, up 4, up 4, 3, 2, 1. As opposed to we were a 7 at that 7 on here. So you can see it soon comes down. Got to take a little bit more out because we're not getting an even print, and then we'll rough in this side as well, because we know that the wear is spread between the two. Obviously whenever I'm measuring, I'm going to be taking in both, so I'm going to give that another roughing pass so I've got a print apart from the last maybe inch on each end, and then flip it over and do this side. So that's the print immediately after the measurement. So you can see, you know, we're getting an even distribution down, just the ends are a bit light. Forget the contact or anything like that, we're just looking to see, are we actually picking up roughly a straight line? Then we know that the wear is on the other side that's left. So I'm going to give that another couple of passes and flip it and do the other side. Right, so I've flipped it over and looking at the other face. I've created the relief channel. I'll give it a couple of passes to pick up some ink, and that's the print we've got. I've then measured it across, and if we 0 there and there, we've got a hump of 4 thou, 4 thou, 1.5. So it's quite a pronounced thick section here. So I'm going to give that 3 or 4 passes and then widen it out a bit. I want to get it so that I'm within 1 thou of these before I start doing too much in the way of printing. Just starting to get a finishing pass down it now. So this is the first face. I roughed it into within 1/2 thou across the width, sorry, to within 1 thou across the width. Now I'm generating a face, and then I can bring the other one parallel to it. I'll explain when I get to the second face why I've done it this way. It's basically so I don't end up 2 or 3 thou out parallel with the other face. I'm calling that face done now. So I'll flip it over now, take some measurements and work on the other side. Bring it back into parallel and get the contact. Right, well, I'm just doing another measurement check. Still the narrowest point at the front end, and I've got 1 thou taper widening out. So I am going to now switch to finishing, basically to bring that last thou in. It's been hovering plus or minus 1/2 thou, and as I've developed a face along this side, I've took material off, but predominantly at this end, so I've just left it a bit fat there. So I'll get that down and should be tickety bill on that. Just to show, that's the roughed in face, so you can see the blue on it. It doesn't need much, probably a couple of passes will sort that. I'm going to call that done. So that's both faces now done, and they're parallel or coplanar to within, well, if there's 4/10 in it end to end, that's as much as there is, so plus or minus 2/10. I'm happy with that. Well, this has got to be one of the hardest things to get a decent image of, but I'm happy I've got sufficient coverage and contact there. It's really, I can't get a decent picture of it, but I'm perhaps not as high as some of the other contact faces, but it's certainly adequate for what it's doing. So that's the lower half fixed side. So the last half is the one with the gib strip. So what I'm going to do now is just clean this all off, clamp that down onto the top of the cross slide, re-ink the mating part, do another rub and just see how it compares. It's a bit of a heavy inking, but that's showing reasonable contact down there. So yeah, I'm happy that that's done. So next job is to have a look at the gib. I'll just get you in the overhead sky up, and I haven't got wobbling about so much. Well, I'm going to show this just from this angle, just because it's easier to demonstrate it. But we slide the mating face in. That's the gib. That's the contact bearing face. So we've got about, I don't know, maybe 1/4 of an inch of movement on there, and I've not scraped that face to give me contact yet. So I am of the view that this is going to be undersized. So the options I've got is remake it, and my experience of making these kind of taper gibs is there's quite a lot of work in it for what it is. It raises questions about what kind of material do I use. Do I use a brass or a bronze? It wants to be something similar kind of hardness to the cast iron on here, but then for the amount of work it's going to do, a soft brass would work fine. Or do I build up this back face? And I think the easiest solution I can think of is clean that off, and for all intents and purposes super glue on a brass shim of the required thickness, so that I've got material here that I can then scrape back for contact. So what I'm going to do is give that a good stoning off, do the same on the back because there's a few dinks and whatever on it, slide it in, and then see where I can get in terms of feeler gauge down the back of it, and then see what that dictates in terms of a piece of shim stock. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. There's nothing to say that I can't make one up at a later date when I've got a bit more time, but at the moment I just want to get this back together. Once I've got the gib strip in, then I can stick the screw in and the bronze nut, because I think there's going to be an alignment issue, because obviously having removed material off the dovetail faces this size, the centre line of that is now shifted over. So the hole that the nut sits through, which is here, that's the nut assembly, that's obviously set up centre, and I don't know how much side to side movement there is available. So one way would be to make another eccentric, so machine this down by, I don't know, 3/16, something like that, and then make up an eccentric to take up the gap so that I can shift it left and right, or whichever way is needed. There's a bit of play in that nut, so at some stage I'll have to remake it. Again, I need to get a tap for it, which means checking out what it is. Oh, it's a 1/2 inch B8 8 TPI. And it's right hand thread by the look of it. Yeah. Righto. So I'm just messing about with a bit of shim stock to see how much material I need on the gib key to make it tight. That's removed any of the sideways movement, and it's given me maybe 3/8 of an inch adjustment here. So I've got 10 thou stock at the front and 5 thou at the back. So evidently the taper was worn at the front, so I think I need somewhere in the region of 35-40 thou adding to it, just to give me something then to re-scrape on this face. So I'm going to have a bit of a think about what's going to be the best way of doing that now. I'm seriously considering buying a piece of brass and making a new one. See what I can find. But yeah, that I've got 10 thou packer behind here and 5 thou here. Food for thought. That might be another video. Well, I think I'm going to call it a day. Get this next video uploaded. The top slide is, I've just knocked it back together as assembly, deburred the kit, the gib, and slid it in. We're out of adjustment, so I've got to build up the face or make a new. And there are a number of options which have been discussed in the comments on the previous video. Yeah, a couple of other things I've noticed is the handle that came off is missing its protrusion, one of them, so I'll make up something for that, and then it will want cleaning up and painting. It's not a bad place to stop and have a breather, is it? So I'm sat on top of an edge called Windgather Rocks in the Peak District with the faithful hound. This is was it Thursday morning, and we put the latest video up last night, offering to supply scrapers, and I'm blown away by the interest. It's great. So looks like I'll be making a few of them next week. Yeah, I mean, I'm well chuffed with that. Thanks for the support, peeps. Hopefully we'll get everything out within a week, subject to getting confirmation of addresses and payment and all the rest of the palaver. So yeah, thanks very much. See you on the next video, which this will be attached to. Sky's just had a crazy 5 minutes. She loves it up here, and we've not been for a few weeks. And there's nobody else around. It's early morning, so the nights of all the scent of all the critters that are running around at night are hanging over the grass. Oh, and some relatively fresh sheep poo, which is always good for a tasting. What you got? So all this section down here, the forestry guys are working through it now, and they're taking out quite big portions of it, which will compress the deer numbers. So we should see a few deer this season. And I only look at them, I don't shoot them. It's quite tightly controlled shooting deer in the UK. I haven't got the right set of tweeds.